All right, so this is a suggestion via a channel member. The name of the video is How People Lived Before Air Conditioning. Probably terribly. I'm gonna be completely honest. I think I've heard of something called like a swamp cooler while like hanging out with some of my buddies in the North Georgia mountains, right? But other than that, I think you still need kind of like electricity for it. Life without air conditioning does not seem like something that I would ever want to partake in, specifically being, a moderately big boy here, guys. All right. I don't know. What did you do? Like, how did you deal with the southern heat and the humidity? Like, was it like, did everyone have like heat strokes and things? I have so many questions. Let's just go and jump to this video immediately. This is coming from the channel, This House.
Have you ever wondered how people cooled their homes before air conditioning? Hi everyone, Ken here. Today we're looking back in time at the various innovations that allowed Americans to cool off before modern
What is that?
technology. Hit that subscribe button and let's chill out with a special
What is
episode of This
that?
House. Before air conditioning, Americans battled summer heat with ingenuity and endurance. On a sweltering July afternoon in the
Bro, was that a communal ice cube?
late 1880s, one might find relief on a wraparound porch, rocking slowly in the shade as cicadas hummed. Porches were more than social spaces. They were almost universal in 19th century home design, providing a shaded outdoor living room where families could catch a breeze and even take meals al fresco. Inside the house, high ceilings and tall windows helped the heat rise out of reach.
Okay.
Many homes were built with a central hall and doors aligned front to back. Throwing them open created a wind tunnel of cooler air blowing straight through the house.
Crosswinds.
Builders keenly studied the art of ventilation. They positioned windows to draw in prevailing breezes and added clever features like transom windows above interior doors, which could be cranked open to let stuffy air escape while the doors stayed shut for privacy. In an era before electricity, the breeze
Super
was
smart.
king, and the home itself was a cooling machine. To keep out the worst of the sun, people treated their houses almost like living organisms that could be opened, closed, or even dressed for the weather. The heavy velvet curtains of wintertime gave way to gauzy white drapes in summer, which let air circulate while dimming the sun's glare. Exterior shutters were pulled tight during the day's peak to block direct sunlight,
Whatever this piece of footage is from Europe, the South.
then slotted open to inviting cooler evening air. After the Civil War, canvas awnings became ubiquitous, unfurling over windows in cities from New York to New Orleans. Those iconic striped awnings weren't just for show. They could cut indoor temperatures noticeably by keeping sunlight off the glass.
Okay,
Even
that's
the
smart.
landscaping played a role. Tall deciduous trees were planted strategically to shade homes in summer and drop their leaves to let in winter sun. In the South, entire houses were often raised on stilts or built with broad overhanging eaves and dog-trot breezeways, which are open passageways right through the center of the house, all to funnel breezes through and lift living quarters above the hot ground.
Guys, that's super smart. I definitely would have figured that was almost exclusively for like floodlands.
Every architectural detail, from high ceilings to cupola vents, worked together to coax heat up and out. A Grand Victorian-era home might even sport a rooftop belvedere or cupola with little windows, creating a chimney effect that let hot air escape skyward. Meanwhile, down at street level, brick city row houses took a different approach. Their thick masonry walls insulated against the heat, and the vertical air shafts between the buildings gave at
Shaft.
least some airflow to stifling tenement rooms. Whether in a mansion or a tenement, the message was the same: fight heat with smart design and ventilation. Life in the past slowed down when mercury climbed high. In the South, towns would go quiet in the early afternoon, with windows shuttered against the cruel sun and residents moving as little as possible until the day began to cool. It was the closest American equivalent to a siesta. Shopkeepers might close up for a few hours, and families would gravitate to shaded verandas, sipping iced tea or lemonade. Those who could manage it sometimes took a cool nap in the parlor or even down in the cellar.
Guys, I noticed that Americans tend to kind of romanticize the concept of a siesta. Guys, I absolutely have the ultimate disdain for siestas. Like, until you actually experience a country that specifically lives within the realm of siesta, uh, let's not romanticize it. All right? I live in the south of Spain half the year, and I can tell you this right now, seriously here. I hate the siesta. Right? Everything closes. Why are we closing at 2 o'clock, bro? Right? I wake up late sometimes. Okay. I want to go get food. Right? I want to go to the store. I want to do things. Why are we closing in the middle of the day? I mean, I get it. It's hot. There's no central air on average. That I get it. It still exists where there's really no central air in most houses because most houses are like 300 years old, right? I get that. I hear you. I hear the excuses. I can hear my wife in my ear right now, basically, right? But the problem is here, guys, siestas are ridiculous. We need to get rid of them, right? Ban siestas. Stop romanticizing the concept of a siesta, guys. All right, let's continue.
Evening brought some relief and social life back outdoors. Families dragged dining tables onto the porch for supper
These are
in the open
beautiful
air,
homes.
and afterward, people sat outside in their yards or on stoops until late, catching any whisper of a breeze under the stars.
What's the
In
difference between a
cities,
patio and a
public parks and
stoop?
green spaces, many created in the late 1800s, offered a refuge of shade and grass. On the most miserable nights, urban dwellers who couldn't bear their stuffy apartments might even camp out in parks or along the waterfront. More commonly, though, city folks took to their fire escapes and roofs. On a hot night in a Manhattan
Yeah.
tenement, it was typical to see fire escapes crowded with people sleeping outdoors in their underwear, desperate
Yeah, guys, that still happens in New York.
for a breeze. This was technically illegal. Housing inspectors would issue fines if they found mattresses blocking the fire escape, but in the worst heat, many had no other choice. During the notorious heat wave of 1896, when indoor temperatures in New York's tenements reportedly soared up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit,
Inside the
some
house?
families climbed up to their building's roof to sleep and escape the
Oh,
heat.
that's too much,
Tragically,
bro.
a number of people rolled off in their sleep and took
Yeah,
a
I
fatal
could've-
fall that week.
I could imagine.
The city's public baths,
never
initially
heard of
open
this.
for hygiene, found crowds of people splashing in just to cool down on brutal days. Whether in a
Public
grand
bath?
home or a crowded slum, people adjusted their daily rhythms to the climate,
Ugh.
rising early to do chores while the air was bearable, taking leisurely pauses at midday, and coming alive at dusk when the heat finally ebbed. But there's one other thing. If you time travel to the 1880s, you'd be struck by the clothing, not least because people somehow managed to stay cool or at least survive under all those layers. Victorian fashion demanded propriety regardless of the weather. Men still wore long sleeves, long pants, and often vests and jackets. Women wore floor-length dresses with petticoats and corsets. It looks suffocating to us, but Gilded Age Americans had their adaptations. For one, their garments were made of natural, breathable fibers, lightweight cottons, linens, or tropical weight wools, rather than the synthetics we know today. They also shed some of the excess layers in the hottest months, and once they sweat through the lower layers, the damp clothes would quickly cool them in the shade. White and light-colored fabrics were popular in summer for their heat-reflecting qualities. Think the classic image of a southern planter in a white linen suit. And accessories doubled as climate gear. Broad-brimmed straw hats and ladies' parasols created personal portable shade, while the omnipresent handheld fan provided a self-made breeze. Folding hand fans had been status symbols earlier in the 19th century, imported from Asia and Europe, used not only to cool off, but as fashionable props in high society. By the late 1800s, however, fans became dime a dozen giveaways. Mass-produced paper fans were handed out as advertisements for companies. On a sweltering Sunday in 1895, a church service would be a sea of fluttering fans, each parishioner diligently fanning themselves in pews that felt like ovens. The hand fan was such a staple of summer life that it bridged all classes, from society ladies with silk fans to factory workers with paper ones. Of course, not all cooling tricks were so genteel. City urchins found their own ways to beat the heat. In the late 19th century, a booming
Did you have to call them urchins, bro? Did you have to?
ice trade made real ice available to ordinary Americans on an unprecedented scale.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. This is a communal ice. Does everyone in the city get a lick, guys? Everyone? Do they rub their face on it to cool down, and then because they're eating it, guys. So they're oh god, guys, I'm such a germaphobe. I know it, guys. I can't imagine. That is absolutely nasty, guys. Like that's diabolically nasty. Oh.
Scale. Entrepreneurs like Frederick Tudor had begun harvesting vast quantities of natural ice from New England ponds and shipping it far and wide, and by the 1870s and 80s, nearly every American city had an iceman delivering blocks of ice to homes. A typical middle-class family would have an icebox in the kitchen, essentially an insulated cabinet cooled by a hefty block of ice, which kept food chilled, kind of like a precursor to the modern refrigerator. This meant cold drinks, chilled watermelon, and ice cream were delights no longer reserved just for the ultra-wealthy. Ice cream parlors sprouted up in towns across America, serving scoops to help folks forget the heat for a few sweet minutes. Ice was also used in more direct cooling contraptions. In theaters and lecture halls, managers sometimes placed a big block of ice in front of an electric fan, or even a crew of workers with palm fans to blow chilled air towards sweating audiences. A famous example came from the sick room of President James Garfield. Navy engineers rigged up an early cooling device to make the bedridden president more comfortable. They blew air over ice and through cotton screens, managing to lower the bedroom temperature by several degrees, a
I think that's a swamp cooler.
small mercy during a Washington heat wave.
That's what it sounds
Inventors
like.
have been tinkering with the dream of quote-unquote mechanical cold for decades. As early as 1842, a forward-thinking Florida physician named John Gorey built an ice-making apparatus to cool down yellow fever patients.
Okay.
Gorey's machine could actually refrigerate air and produce ice, but it was ahead of its time and failed to catch on. It wasn't until decades later that technology really began to meet the demand for cool. Philip Deal, an engineer for the Singer Sewing Machine Company, famously stuck a fan blade on a sewing machine motor and mounted it to the ceiling in 1887, creating one of, if not the earliest modern ceiling fan. Still, in the 1890s, most homes did not have electricity. Only about half of American homes were wired even by 1925, so these electric wonders were rare. More common were human-powered or oil-powered fans. Ingenious inventors came up with
Oil-powered
gadgets like the rocking chair
fans.
fan, a fan attached by belts and pulleys to your rocking
Guys,
chair so that a pleasant breeze wafted every time you rocked back and forth.
like I personally, like I know a good amount of people who are like in like the off-grid homesteading community, right? And I personally think that could probably be an option, to be honest. Like that actually makes sense. And so far, it's just human power. It's fine. I'll go ahead and get some wind on me. I'm fine. I
A
like that.
Philadelphia craftsman even built a foot pedal fan contraption in the 1780s, which founding fathers like George Washington and Ben Franklin tried out in their own homes. By the late 19th century, you could buy clockwork wind-up table fans that ran for half an hour on a spring coil, or small fans fueled by kerosene and alcohol flames, heating a little
Okay,
engine. In short, people were willing to try just about anything for a bit of cool air.
guys, bring some
Not
of these
everyone had the
back.
same resources to beat the heat. The Gilded Age was an era of sharp class and regional contrast, and those showed up in how people coped with hot weather. One of the most popular heat-beating strategies for those who could afford it was migration, getting out of Dodge for the summer. As American cities grew in the 19th century, the urban well-to-do developed the tradition of summer retreats. They built seaside cottages in places like Newport, Rhode Island, or mountain lodges in the Adirondacks, and to camp there during the hottest weeks, leaving the city's baking concrete behind. Even some middle-class families began taking advantage of new railroads to spend a week at the shore or a lakeside camp. An observer in the 1890s would note the annual summer emptiness of elite city neighborhoods and the corresponding boom of life at resort towns. Whether by changing locale, changing routine, or modifying their surroundings, Americans adapted to their regional climates with a mix of creativity and common sense. Looking back on those summers before AC, one can't help but admire the resilience and ingenuity of Americans in the past. They built houses that breathed, wore clothes that mitigated the heat, and redesigned their daily routines and harnessed every element of nature they could, water, wind, shade, and ice, to keep their cool. It was a world that knew how to slow down and sweat through the dog days, making the best of life before the miracle of air conditioning changed everything. And as you turn your air conditioners on for the season, you can rest easy knowing that we've come a long way since those sweaty, sweltering times. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. If you enjoyed.
All right, guys. Listen. I like the idea of this. Like some of these ideas are still great because again, there are a good amount of people who just are not choosing to live specifically on grid, right? Because think about it, guys. You can get some really cheap land. Like, and I mean, abnormally cheap land, like owner finance, $75 a month type of thing over on landtrust.com. I am not promoting the website. I'm just telling you that that's a thing that exists, right? So what they do is you go over there, you buy your land, builds up your little homestead, minimal electricity usage type of thing, right? Because you probably don't have any. You need to figure that out. And I think for those type of people who are actually encountering that type of existence or van life, RV life, etc., I think that some of these things would absolutely be amazing, guys, to be honest. My opinion. But all right, listen, guys, in the meantime, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly. If you guys are new here, please like and subscribe.